Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Casey Garrett, and we are the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Tonight, you may have noticed we have a little bit darker of a setup here tonight because our episode tonight is reaching around the world to be with Atira Tan. Welcome, Atira. So Atira is, how can I describe Atira? You know how you come across people and you follow them and see their work and you realize this person is completely devoted to their craft. Mind, body, soul, spirit. She's all in on her work in the world and her purpose of the world. And Atira is definitely one of those people. I've followed her now for a couple years. I so appreciate the breadth and depth of the work that she's doing. It's so vital and necessary at this time. And I'm really, really delighted to introduce her and her beautiful work to all of you tonight in our community. So please welcome Atira. I'm going to read her. Atira has done so much in her career. I'm going to read her bio for you guys, but just know, go to her website, follow her work because it's so rich. Atira is deeply committed to empowering others to be leaders and trauma-informed practitioners. She's a somatic experiencing practitioner, a TED speaker, a #1 best-selling author, and an expressive art therapist who founded Art to Healing, an Australian charity that supports the trauma recovery of sex-trafficked survivors in Asia. In her private practice and retreat centers, such as the Temple of the Way of Light, she specializes in trauma-informed somatic plant medicine integration and therapy. Atira is currently the psychedelic integration director at Aya Healing Retreats. She's been mapping the trauma recovery of hundreds of plant medicine participants in her private practice as an integration trauma specialist for the last 6 years, and she co-facilitates healing trauma plant medicine retreats and dietas in Peru. She's the founder of the Somatic Plant Medicine Integration Method, as well as a trauma-informed plant medicine facilitation program with a community of over 800 students in 3 years. Please welcome Atira Tan. Hi, Atira.
Mm-hmm. Hey there, Casey. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Yeah, made me feel all fuzzy inside. And I'm really grateful to be here and with you and with your community. And I'd like to really welcome everybody that's out there listening right now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So where to begin with you? So you have been working for almost the last couple decades in this work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take us back to where it began for you. Was there a moment? Was it a process?
I think that my work in trauma really started, in the womb. If I was really honest with you, I have a history of intergenerational trauma, from my being born in an Asian female body and working, with a lot of oppression of the feminine and, patriarchy. And I think that when I was even in the womb, when I explored those places, through plant medicine and psychedelics, I think that even then I was connected to, I think, the suffering that the legacy of my family and my blood, my bones, my DNA. So the family that I was born in was complex. And, I went through my own journey of, I think, pain and suffering. So, it's been a journey, my devotion, as you mentioned, dedication and commitment to really understanding not just these imprints that have been passed down, I think, from womb to womb or body to body, but understanding how we can, really overcome adversity. So I think that my journey started there. And my journey in, creating safer spaces and being so passionate about this in the plant medicine world came from one of my first experiences with ayahuasca. I've been taking on the journey with psychedelics, I think from the mid 90s. But in around 2004, I had my first ayahuasca ceremony, and I was living in Cambodia at the time because I was working with child sex trafficked survivors. And I was unfortunately, sexually assaulted during my first ceremony by the facilitator or the shaman that was leading the ceremony. And I was very fortunate because I had the resilience and the strength to push him away and to really, claim my boundaries and to say no, which doesn't happen for many survivors out there. But what actually happened afterwards really shocked me because I told, my community and my friends were also at the ceremony. And the response that I shared around, being sexually assaulted during in the ceremonial space, it was kind of outside in the space, the ceremony was in the space, but I had gone outside to nature just to get a breath of fresh air, was that it was very normalized. My friends kind of minimized the experience. And their response was like, oh yeah, the shaman is kind of like that. Yeah. So, that was it. And I was, practicing as a trauma therapist already. And I was just so shocked by the lack of, well, number one, the normalization of, boundary violations that happen in such a sacred space that never happened to me before. And then in my journey of plant medicine, I kept seeing, different kind of boundary violations, different ways where people felt unsafe, during these ceremonies, the sacred spaces. And I, decided to do something about it and move it. It's easy to get in a freeze when those boundary violations happen. And I understand through my, life and through my work that the only way out of it is really to act and to take action. So part of this journey has really been around, taking action and finding pockets or ways that I can to really minimize that from happening again, from really advocating for, the rights of survivors within that space, but also educating and teaching facilitators and people working in the psychedelic field how to really create safety for other people, because without safety, we can't really relax and we can't really heal. So this is really my mission in this world at the moment, is to create safer spaces for everybody so that we can really genuinely and sincerely heal with compassion, with care, with curiosity.
Thank you. So beautiful. I would love for you to share with our community your cancer journey. That was such a power. I was reading your story and have listened to your story, and it's such a powerful testament to intuition, empowerment, sovereignty, knowing what is true for you, and also a testament to the physical manifestation of trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would love for you to share with everyone.
Sure, I'd love to. So as I mentioned before, I think that, these imprints for me, as I mentioned, around patriarchy, around like oppression of the feminine, really kind of, I connected to that, I think, in the womb space. And a little bit of my journey or my history is that, I'm half Chinese, and my, during the time of when my mother was born, there was a one-child policy where, if babies were born male, then they would be more revered than, babies that were born female. So I come from a very long line of female genocide that spans actually not just in China, but really around Asia. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate working in trafficking in Asia, because there is no equality for women. You know, when you're born female, it means that you are less equal than being a man, and that creates all sorts of injustices in the world, including trafficking. And I lived my life, you know, as I mentioned, my family background, my home environment was quite dangerous. It was unsafe. It was very complex. And I didn't really understand what it meant to, you know, what it meant to really even be a woman, and the different kind of layers of oppression that I had been born under, societal conditioning or, you know, cultural conditioning, and the history of my own mother and her grandmother that gave her away, and my great grandmother, and so on and so forth. So I'm living life, you know, I'm yogi at the time. I was very healthy. I was vegan. I was very devoted to spiritual practice. And I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and I went for an operation. And after I went for the operation, the doctor told me that, you know, it was not successful, it spread, and so on and so forth. And when we were like writing treatment plan, discussing that, I just had this really, really strong sense, this felt sense that, you know, the medical route really wasn't my route. And I needed to go inside and to reflect, to be introspective about what was it, you know. I was 26 years old at that time, so I was fairly young and healthy. And I was really committed to understanding. I had really a felt sense that this is emotional, you know, this is deeper, this is spiritual, even psychological. And I, you know, decided that I was going to take some time to heal myself and really investigate what it was within my field, within this unified field, which is Atira, of what was creating this cancer and this imbalance in my body. And so I did take time out. I took a year out, and I lived in an ashram. And during that time, every single day, I did commit that to, you know, really going inside and exploring and really listening to what was happening in this area of my body. And what I discovered was the intergenerational trauma that I was naming. So the grief, you know, the lack of belonging, the disempowerment of my ancestral history. But, you know, as I was tapping into that, I realized that we're actually all connected, everyone. And what I had experienced, you know, with this oppression, there were millions and millions and millions of other, you know, Asian female bodies that were going through the same thing as well. And the cervical cancer, what I saw in my investigations, my somatic investigations within, was that it was connected to the intergenerational trauma of my grandmother, you know, giving my mother away because she was born female, and so on and so forth. And all that pain was in a way kind of imprinted in this area of my body. So that's great information. So I started to work with the pain, and it's not easy, Casey. You know, it's not easy to be still, you know, to really process, to sit with the pain, to move through it. But, you know, I did. And I had a very profound experience one day where I was working with, you know, my grandmother had already passed away, but I was really kind of working with some of her unresolved trauma, some of her unresolved grief and guilt and shame, and, you know, everything that comes with that trauma vortex of oppression and disempowerment. And I saw how, you know, through what I did, the healing work that I did, that something was free, something was liberated, something had been let go. And I had this feeling, this felt sense again in my body that, okay, I had unplugged that trauma imprint that was connected to my body around sovereignty, you know, around so many different things. And I went to the hospital, I checked. So now I'm here, you know, almost 20 years later, and I'm, you know, in remission. Cancer hasn't come back. And, you know, I've worked with child sex trafficking for a very, very long time. So almost 2 decades now. And I think that, at 26 years old, when I was working with these survivors, I really understood them on an emotional level, on a psychological level, on an intellectual level. But after this process, this journey of healing cancer, I really understood what it's like to be, to be disempowered, to not have privilege, to, come from a society and a culture that the moment that you're born, or even like when you're in the womb, if your parents decide, realize that you're born female, immediately you are discriminated. There is a field and imprint of discrimination that descends, largely unconscious or subconscious, but it is here in this continent. And, obviously the survivors that I work with have a very different story, but on a felt sense level, I was one of them. I could really understand what it means to grow up with that oppression, which is pervasive and deciduous. It's not really talked about. It's accepted, but it puts female women in a freeze response when we realize that we're not equal to men, or we are of a lesser value. And that conditioning still goes on till today. And I am really passionate about, really creating liberation from that oppression, but also helping women to reclaim their sovereignty. Even if you've been sold into sex trafficking, you can do that. Everyone can do that with these tools and resources that we share at RT Healing. So it was very beautiful, beautiful path and journey interweaving for the greater, perhaps the greater good of humanity. So I am grateful for that experience, really grateful for the experience. And being able to understand on that level.
So beautiful and courageous. Thank you for sharing. So you and I have both in our work worked with thousands and thousands of women, and I in somatics and me with plant medicine, and I've seen so many women come with reproductive issues, PMDD, PMS, hormonal dysregulation, reproductive issues. It is remarkable how frequently those symptoms are tied to early childhood sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. It's undeniable from the thousands of women I have seen and worked with. And on one hand, it's the most powerful thing to watch women move through their own healing, reclaim themselves again. But at the same time, they're walking that path. It's also heartbreaking and tender because you can see who that woman was meant to be before something was done to her to take that from her. So it's a reclamation, but also so bittersweet at the same time, because I think women gain the awareness for the first time, sometimes of how much they lost and how many years they sacrificed. And so we talk a lot. We've recently seen a lot of women heal PMDD, where it really stole a large portion of their lives and relationships because they couldn't function half of the month. They couldn't work. They couldn't be the parent they wanted to be. And to watch them step into freedom from that after months of plant medicine work is really, really so beautiful to witness. But we often talk about, as long as we're doing the healing work, that's one thing. But until we change the underlying culture that enables women to be treated that way to begin with, it's like sand rolling through our fingers. So you have been in the arena in this work for so long. I would love to hear your vision for How do we bring direct healing work to women, but also how do we change the societal paradigm underpinning all of that? I know that's a very big question, but I would love to. I know, I'm sure you've thought it through.
Yeah, this is a really, really big question. And, I really resonate with your story. Having my professional experience as well, working with these women too. And I do absolutely 100% agree that this issue of oppression is systemic. And it is also, intergenerational as well. So, I think that in our bodies, and especially in this area of in our bodies, both men and women, there has been such a strong kind of power dynamic, which is around, oppression and control and greed and, so on and so forth, instead of love. Yeah, love and equality. And these systems of oppression are very much based on fear. Yeah. And we really, really need to change the systems, and I think that the way that, I've kind of worked and how, I've decided to maybe contribute, I think that it really takes everybody to change something that is systemic through awareness, through education, through our own personal healing journey, and also our desire to change. With everybody, depending on, it doesn't matter what sex you are, what gender you are, or, what you lean towards. This is a humanistic issue, oppression. And it doesn't serve anybody to be in that power dynamic of control and greed and fear. But it serves everybody if we all, as a collective, step into the place of love and humility and service. And the way that, we have worked at Art to Healing and myself, being a therapist and working one-on-one with, with these survivors and organizations, is to start from the individual. And in my work, I work with, humans that are born to Asian female bodies or identify as being female. So, just as what you shared, it is such an incredible moment for me when a girl or a woman starts to really, number one, understand her true power. And just kind of, this is an awakening experience, right? They kind of wake up and they go, oh, wow, I was unconscious of the imprint that had, kind of like an elephant on your chest, right? I didn't even realize that there was an elephant on my chest. But now I can see the elephant on my chest. I can feel the elephant on my chest. And now I have tools to actually push the elephant away from my chest and actually stand up and stand on my own 2 feet and celebrate the fact that I'm whole. That is such a beautiful moment. And I think for a lot of the women and girls that I work with, that moment will change the rest of their lives, because you cannot be ignorant anymore if you awaken to who you truly are, what we call, what I call the blueprint, your essence. And in this essence place, there is no disparity. There's no inequality. But usually, when we do these workshops and these girls, awaken and they reclaim themselves and they know that they are something of value, they go into an environment where everyone else kind of says that they are, not equal to being a man. I work in interesting cultures where, they believe that, for example, if a woman is menstruating and if you, touch a plant, the plant dies, the woman is the fault, that's the fault of the woman. Everything is the fault of the woman because, they did something that was wrong during, that period of menstruation, for instance. So it's so hard for a woman that's been awakened to go back into the environment and go back into that society where everyone else is telling her that she's wrong and, you know, it's her fault and she's to blame for everything that happens. So what we do offer is, you know, opportunities of psychoeducation where villages and communities, or, you know, they also need to understand, they also need to go through a certain kind of internal process where they also kind of wake up, and to not only to awaken to, you know, the fact that there can be a different way of doing things, but to move it into action. There needs to be action that comes out, you know, of this educational work, because without action, without implementation, yeah, you know, we'll keep continuing that same pattern. So we really need to interrupt the pattern. So to answer, I think that we need to work on, you know, perhaps changing, awakening the minds, the hearts, the wounds of women, really empowering them, helping them to heal that trauma, to really resolve some of those, what we call somatic experiencing, some of these protective, you know, impulses or imprints. But then there really needs to be also education on the collective level, in the environment, in the society, in culture, and to really kind of investigate, is this really serving me? Yeah, to these cultural kind of imprints. Like, for example, yeah, it's all the woman's fault. Like, who is this serving? And, you know, where does this come from? And what is happening in your community through this conditioning, through this belief? And is it really true? And right here in this moment, if it's not true and if it's creating more harm than good, what are certain things that we can do to actually change that belief? Yeah, small little things that can change the belief. So in Nepal, where I work, there is this cultural tradition which is called Chaupadi. I've written a lot about that in peer-reviewed journals and so on and so forth. But in Chaupadi, they believe that a woman who is menstruating is unclean. So they, you know, are unclean and impure. So they cannot touch any utensils. They cannot go to the temple. They have to sometimes sleep outside. A lot of the times in a cowshed, you know, that's kind of further away from the family. So they feel really isolated and really abandoned. But then there are also, it's people, you know, girls, they die in the practice of Chaupadi as well. So I think that part of it is really changing, you know, certain traditions like that, with the community really understanding what, you know, how to move that into a way that is, you know, perhaps still acknowledging, you know, religion and also cultural kind of rights, but also creating, you know, equality and safety for women as well. So giving them different choices of different ways of things can be done. Yeah, compassionately and lovingly, because usually when there's brute force, there will be pushback. So changing the minds and the hearts of people in the environment, in the community, in the culture are also really important.
Thank you. Powerful. One of the things you just said, we were just recently talking about in our community, which is, I think there's this collective action, at least here in the United States, I see all around, of women reclaiming those moments when they have been shunned. And specifically the example you just gave around, you know, what we notice is once women, especially women who had really dysregulated menstrual cycles and a lot of pain and shame around it, when they heal that moment of their cycle becomes a powerful spiritual portal. It's a time where the veil is very thin, where they're in direct communication with the divine. They have downloads, they have powerful dreams. And the same thing happens around menopause too. So women, I think, are starting to reclaim those moments when we were, for, in our lifetime, supposed to be the most quiet and go away. This is the most powerful time that women possess. And so, yeah, I think there's a collective movement to reclaim those moments. Another
Right.
thing I love about your work is the expansiveness of bringing trauma training and awareness, not just to the victims of trauma, but to the greater society surrounding them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your book. I would love for you to talk about your book a bit. It's called Phoenix.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Please share a little bit
So
about it.
I am so this book is really a collection of, many women's stories that will probably connect to women all around the world. And I was featured in the book. It's the first chapter of the book, where my title really is, transforming pain into power. And when I share, my story, I really acknowledge that this really is the story of, millions of women out there. And we stand in solidarity of this journey of transforming pain into power. And a lot of, I think the book is based on, I think, what you shared, coming from my complex trauma and the oppression, that my mother experienced, and my grandmother, and so on and so forth, the spiritual power, and I think the gift of, you talked about menstruation, but when I look at my relationship with my body, it's really my relationship with my cycle and all the seasons that we move through in a cycle, as women, with this amazing gift, here, that's sitting here in this space in our bodies. They are powerful. They're really powerful, and they're connected to our sense of, spirituality, power, compassion, so on and so forth. this direct, this direct, I think, power, which is here in our bodies. Like, I think that in society, or the way that, we live in a very yang kind of culture, very masculine culture, is that we put a lot of emphasis on being very productive, right? Being very productive, getting from A to B, we're being really busy, this kind of, I don't know, distorted, for me, this distorted perception of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be equal to a man, is to be, just as masculine as men. But actually, we have a different power that is really around being. Yeah. And when we can tap into this power, it is, it is so powerful, Casey. I mean, I sense that you also, connect, that power within yourself. And it's kind of unseen, so it's not like there is a lot of external doing. There's not a lot on the outside, but there is power on the inside that is really a gift, I think, to our humanity today, and all the imbalances that we experience on the earth, in our society, in our environment, in our politics. It comes from that imbalance of too much yang and not enough yin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So part of the book is really around that. It's around how we have, in a way, not through any fault of our own, kind of separated from that intrinsic power, this innate power, which is within us, which is actually sitting here in our bodies. It's really direct. We have direct access. But I think that women have not been schooled or taught or opened up to how to connect to what is inside. How we can, stay still. Number one, it's safe enough to be still and to be aware and to listen, first of all. It's scary, I think, for most people, for most women, because sometimes you have to kind of move through the layers of pain in order to find that connection to the blueprint. And at times, moving through those layers of pain and integrating those disowned parts of ourselves, which are, systemic and intergenerational. That process is not easy. And, I think that women haven't been given the tools to feel safe enough to really settle into that place. So this book is really around my journey of that, and my own journey of how, I healed the cervical cancer, but it's around also, transforming those layers of pain. When you do find your power, I think for myself, it is a responsibility to share that with other people. And, even though I've been through a very complex trauma background and I grew up in an, unsafe environment, I think that I'm very privileged, because I had, shelter, and I had, grew up in Singapore, so we had good education there in that country. But when I work with, these sex traffic survivors, they come from very poor, impoverished, environments and situations with a lack of education, absolutely no resources to even, support them to think differently to what they were told in their family and society. So the book is about, some of my own story, and also some of the stories of these women who have, I'm just so proud of them, but they have, found liberation within oppression and really reclaimed that for themselves. And when you look at their trauma history and where they are now, it's really, really wanting to advocate their stories more and more, because as these women, they're not, I think that the light is not kind of shined on them enough. Their stories are not shared enough, but their stories are so powerful and so such a source of inspiration to us all. So it's really around, putting what we learn into action. To also, if we look at trauma, we need action and we need service in order to kind of break out from that place of freeze. High freeze, we're in high freeze. And if we look at all these reproductive issues and so on and so forth, in my perspective, one way of looking at it is that, our collective wounds have been in kind of like a high freeze situation from so much oppression and violation, boundary violations, so on and so forth. So part of breaking through that trauma cycle is around taking action. And for me, my action is around supporting marginalized populations, marginalized, women, to find liberation and freedom.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so, so much. I'd love to delve into plant medicine and plant medicine's role in your healing work. Yeah. Please. What you just described about the way we heal in layers and how we heal with how subtlety can be so, so powerful. I know that's a big why people are drawn to microdosing work, because it is a more feminine, subtle power over force. They're different. They're equal, but very different in the energetic sourcing behind them. So I'd love for you to talk about how you incorporate medicines. And I know you work with a depth and breadth of medicines, which is unique also. So yeah, please.
Yeah. So I think that before we start with this topic, I like to be 100%, transparent and also clear with the audience that when I work with sex traffic survivors, I do not offer plant medicine, with the charity work that I do. I think that, plant medicine use is very powerful, and it's very important to stay very safe. And it's also, culturally kind of appropriate. And what I would also love to kind of name as well that, in my perspective, for me, I see, plant medicine and psychedelics as being, it can be a very powerful resource for healing, But like anything on the planet, there is both shadow and there is also light. So we need to kind of, walk the path of, my perspective is to really kind of hold both parts in wholeness, to understand that for me, the use of psychedelics and plant medicine kind of points to the moon. Say the truth that we're looking is the moon, right? And it points there. But we still need to kind of take effort, I think, to walk that path, so that we can kind of embody some of these insights that we're kind of given. So it's not like the magic pill. I don't see psychedelics as like the magic pill where, we have a journey or we do a ceremony and then we're, 100% healed. I mean, I'm not saying that, that doesn't happen for everyone, but most of the people that I do see, there is effort that needs to go behind that. Yeah. And I think that what I really love, about the healing that can emerge, if people are in a safe space and they have the tools to, connect insight in a safe way that feels non-overwhelming, is that through the intelligence of these plants and psychedelics, we can really, our defensive psychological adaptations or layers can start to soften in that space. And through our own somatic intelligence and intelligence of the plants, we can, when we set an intention or when we go into a journey, for instance, it can really open up, portals of connecting to perhaps what was unconscious or hidden from us. And I think that that is so valuable in the journey of healing. However, when we have touched that place within ourselves, I think that after the psychedelic experience, we still do need to, number one, perhaps recruit layers of support, which is what I think you're doing and, what so many people are doing, so that the healing that we do receive and the insights and so on and so forth can be embodied. Yeah. So that these insights don't become, a experience that just fades into the background. We actually become a living, walking, embodiment of our insights, and the healing really kind of grows, and through that we can also help other people as well around us through our own kind of process. And what I really love to also talk about, with microdosing, especially, I know that your audience works with, psilocybin and mushrooms, is that when, the intelligence of the mushrooms, working in, I think, a very slow and titrated way, especially with trauma, is really important. This is what I really, really love about the microdosing work, is that this is what we're doing. We're, getting to the more subtle layers, this more subtle awarenesses of what's kind of happening. And it's healing in a very titrated way, which I believe is necessary actually for when we look at trauma healing. This is kind of necessary that we move in a really slow, titrated way where we can, in a way, navigate through the pace of our healing. So we do not feel, out of control. We do not feel like it's too much or overwhelming when our nervous system spikes and goes into overwhelm. I don't think that that's very helpful. So that's really, what I love about the process of microdosing is that, through education, we can connect to our bodies and healing in a deeper way, but in a way where it is slow. Yeah. And we can take pauses and we can slow down so we're not overwhelmed. And I think that that is really such a huge gift.
Absolutely. So two aspects and modalities that we have found extremely complementary to microdosing practice are somatics, body work and somatic practices, and creative practices, expressive arts. And you use both of those in your trauma work. So I found that really fascinating. Um, both because I think that's a huge part of the healing process for so many women is they learn to survive by separating from their
Mm.
bodies. And women, especially, like our bodies are a wealth of information constantly. It's our feelings and our body connection is everything. It's a huge part of our intuition. And then two, we see with practice, it's been pronounced in the last year, the just the openings of creative expression, whether it's written expression or vocal expression. We've seen so many manifestations of women finding their voice in a way that they didn't know that they possess. So I'd love for you to talk about those aspects of your practice, your somatic elements, as well as your expressive arts therapy and how you work with those.
Oh, what you shared about your experience with women finding their voice and really expanding their creativity just put a huge smile on my face. And I feel so, warm my heart, when I hear that. And yes, absolutely, absolutely. What you're naming is what I see as well in many women. And yeah, in order to survive, one of the strategies is to live in our heads because, our body, even though it is such an amazing wealth of information for both men and women, it is scary sometimes in this place, especially if we have, experienced abuse or neglect, even. It's not always, our home. That's our body doesn't always feel like home. A lot of the time it's scary, or a lot of the time it feels, anxious or overwhelming. So I do, really want to share that, living in our heads for women is a protective strategy. And thank God for that strategy, because we wouldn't have probably survived otherwise. And, what I love, I think the most in my practice is helping and supporting, guiding women and men to reconnect to that wealth of information, but in a safe and titrated way. And I really do believe that, especially in the realm of plant medicine and psychedelics, they work, the plant medicine intelligence works with our somatic intelligence. So there's no kind of separation, I think, between both. And when women can connect to their bodies, first, what I see is that we do need to move into layers perhaps of, pain and suffering. And in order to heal the past imprints of why we feel initially unsafe in our bodies, it's not easy. With some people, it can be easy, but with most, it needs to be done in a slow way where we can digest those experiences that happen to us in a way that is reparative and not re-traumatizing. And what I notice is that with most women, when they move through that with the right layers of the support, they start to resolve these protective responses that kept them in a freeze. And when you're in a freeze, it's really hard to express yourself. Number one, it's hard, I think, when a woman has been through any kind of abuse and neglect to even feel worthy of speaking, sharing themselves or sharing their expression. And with many cases, it was unsafe for them to share their expression, and it's scary. It's scary to speak up, so how I work with, plant medicine and psychedelics is that the whole entire journey, when I look at the work with plant medicine and psychedelics, is not just in the ceremony, it actually starts beforehand. And our body can tell us so much information, true information, because our mind can lie, right, Casey? It lies to us. It tells us stories, there's certain narratives. Sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not true. But the body really is our truth barometer. And when we connect to the body, when we connect to our felt sense, there is a connection that happens with the mind and the body where there is wholeness that happens. There's an integration. And through this integration, we can really open the portal for healing during the ceremony. And then after in integration as well, I do use somatic practices. That's my practice as a somatic experiencing practitioner. And we get to sometimes, there are different categories of integration, but there are times where what happens in ceremony is not complete. So we get to complete them through the somatic, approach in our integration sessions so that the person can reach some kind of resolution and freedom, from these imprints. And what I found, as you mentioned, is that the more and more there is wholeness and resolution when they do, when women do kind of remember and digest the experiences that did happen to them, most of the time, this creates a greater sense of power, greater sense of wisdom, what we call maybe, post-traumatic growth, for instance. And part of this post-traumatic growth is around expression. How I use expressive arts is that I find that within the ceremonial space, or sometimes there might be experiences that happen to us, maybe emotions on the insides, sensations. It could be, comfortable, uncomfortable sensations or neutral sensations where language is not enough for you to kind of name, especially in ceremonial work, right? I mean, how do we express, our hallucinations, visions, and what I find is that art is such an incredible tool to pierce through language, to move into maybe the limbic brain or the reptilian brain, the brainstem. And there's so many things around art therapy and expressive arts that I really love. I mean, number one, it gives us a deeper dimension of expression where we can really communicate the heart of what we're feeling, the heart of the felt sense in a way that words cannot, linguistics cannot, because then there's also a part of externalization, especially if a person is working with a trauma imprint, and if they, externalize it outside of themselves, they're able to perceive it in a different way where, say the quote unquote problem or the issue or whatever they're kind of working with is not necessarily inside of them. It's outside on a piece of paper, or it's, in a song, or, in a gesture or a movement. And that can build a different kind of relationship with, quote unquote, an issue. And it suddenly becomes the issue and it's not them. I think a lot of women, they internalize, abuse that happens to them so they can say, I am this way, or I am, the victim, or I am, this is, what happened to me. But through expressive arts, when you externalize it, you can go, oh, the issue is the issue and I am here. Okay. And I have a different perspective. Like, how can I create a different relationship to what I'm externalizing now? So we're talking about, introception and extroception, but finding the balance. I think that, with healing, sometimes we need to find a balance of them both, of introception and extroception. And through this new relationship, I think, people can kind of reclaim what I would call, again, the blueprint. What is my essence? Who am I without the trauma? Because I'm not the trauma. I'm not just the trauma. I'm so much bigger than that. Yeah. And through expressive arts, we can externalize many different parts, not just the trauma, but also our resources as well, and start to create a relationship with our resources, our blueprint, our wise woman, our higher self, so on and so forth. I think that there was one more thing I wanted to share about expressive arts that I really love. And I think that for a lot of trauma survivors, it's hard to imagine what it would be like to live life without trauma. Yeah. If say we were free and liberated, what would our lives look like? So especially for the sex trafficked survivors that I work with, accessing imagination for hope, imagination for inspiration, imagination for the future is really paramount to healing. Because if you're going to, our motto or our mission statement in our organization is really to end the vicious cycle of sex slavery. so that they can, create a life that's free of slavery. But in order for you to create a life that's free of slavery, you need to be able to imagine what life would look like to be free of slavery. So in psychedelic work, whatever we might be working on, whether it is, I don't know, connecting to a higher self, expanding our resources or healing trauma or so on and so forth, we need to access that place of imagination. What would my life look like if I, if I was healed, if I was living my true purpose, what would that look like? And I think that art, the creative arts, is a really, really wonderful way to spark our imagination and to have some kind of landmark that we can walk towards. Yeah. Through this really powerful tool that we have, this resource. Another thing that I really love as well about the creative arts is that we are very mind-based. I think I shared. So, everything is very like in the mind, planning, action, so on and so forth, which can be quite cagey, actually, because we have our own modes of doing certain things. And through life, we tend to lean towards modes that feel safe, right? And we continue these kind of patterns of doing things or living our lives. And what I love about the expressive arts is that it takes us away, it decenters us in a way, takes us away from our normal, modes of thinking, our normal kind of modes of, doing things, of investigation. And it takes us out of the ordinary into something that's a little bit more creative, the use of imagination. And I think that we really do need this as well. Yeah. And for healing and in our lives and to create the lives that we want. So to kind of decenter, to let go of our ritualistic kind of ways of maybe doing things and trying something new, coming out of the box. And the expressive arts, I think, can create a safe container for that.
So beautifully woven. I love it. I love it. Can you share a little bit about your programming and trainings? I work with so many healing artists and healers, but also just kind of regular people in variety of backgrounds and careers who really want to support the healing of society at this time. So can you talk a little bit about your trainings? Are they open to anyone? Are they just for therapists? Yeah, take us through.
Absolutely. So I have two signature programs that I've created. One of them is the trauma-informed plant medicine facilitation program. And everybody can take the program because I think that what the program is really is a deep dive into how trauma and psychedelics and plant medicine kind of work together. And I think that is applicable for even a participant, for instance, that wants to find the right practitioner to kind of work with in their own kind of psychedelic healing, understanding, I think, themselves a lot better. I think that that's one of the big feedback that I get from this course is that people do it and they go, oh, so I understand this about myself. I understand why I respond in this way or why I react in this way and why I have these certain kind of plant medicine experiences and why I don't feel safe with certain facilitators and so on and so forth. So I think my mission really is to promote safety, especially in this, swiftly expanding psychedelic arena field. And I really do believe that is our birthright for everybody to be safe. And the more education we have around that, not just physical safety, but emotional safety, psychological safety, spiritual safety, understanding that process of healing in ourselves as a participant can really expand the potential of healing in those psychedelic spaces a lot more. This program was created for facilitators so that when facilitators, run their own sessions, they can really understand the trauma-informed paradigm. And I think that it's very, very, very important in this world. So the program offers, trauma-informed kind of principles and a structure and a paradigm where facilitators can adopt that and put it into action so that people can feel safer in their ceremonies. And the feedback that I've gotten from many students is that, you know, there are so many reports of their clients feeling so much safer. And when you have clients that feel so much safer, then the risk of re-traumatization, you know, is so much lower. And then true healing can really happen when we can settle into this space, when we're not hyper vigilant, you know, when we are not overwhelmed. And I think that there is a trend in this psychedelic culture with certain, you know, plant medicines and so on and so forth, that we need to, you know, like bust through the trauma and like, you know, really like go in a gung-ho way to like, you know, draw your swords and everything. And I think that there are certain instances where that does work, you know, but I think especially with complex and developmental trauma, you really, really need to go slow, and safety is very, very important to allow those psychological defenses to really soften in spaces of, you know, deep compassion, care, and also attunement and therapeutic presence. And I think that sometimes this can be missing in this world. So that's the 3 months training, facilitator training. And then I also am offering a somatic plant medicine integration practitioner training, which I really love because I combine the intersections there of somatic psychology, which I'm such a big fan of, a little bit of art therapy as well, working with, you know, indigenous wisdom and plant medicine. So this is a very well-rounded course where I empower people to become integration practitioners, understanding the different, you know, categories of integration, but also harnessing this tool which connects us back to our own somatic intelligence, and also the intelligence of the plant medicine, which is right here, right now in our bodies. You know, it's not an experience. I mean, even though it was an experience that happened in the past, we can still access that through our felt sense, you know, through this intelligence, which is in the body, our wisdom. So this is a model that helps people to tap back into that and to guide people through these experiences to resolve whatever was perhaps incomplete during these plant medicine experiences. And also, lastly, you know, teaching how to expand resources, because I think that, you know, we focus a lot on the trauma bit, but really, I think that most of the time, plant medicine can give us incredible resources, like connecting to, you know, our higher self, or connecting to, you know, a moment of compassion for something that happened. So how can we really amplify and expand those resources that we receive and anchor that in our body and our nervous system as an experience that's reparative, an experience that can interrupt perhaps trauma imprint patterns? Yeah. That we're struggling with. So this course is really to enable people to become practitioners and to have your own clients, to start up your own practice. But it also can be very helpful for people who might be struggling on the integration journey and wanting to explore a little bit about, you know, how they can reconnect to their felt sense, to their somatic intelligence, and have a model of working with, you know, what they need to work with after the ceremony. And also, I think that, you know, integration is not widely talked about, or I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about integration too. So what I really love about this course is busting some integration myths, you know, and helping people really to understand how deep the integration journey can go, because it's really the real work starts after the ceremony. And that's what I believe. So if more people can get on board and support other people in their community who might be struggling, I think that this is really a worthwhile cause.
Beautiful. I so appreciate you, Atira. Thank you so much for all of your beautiful work. How can people find you? I know your website is atiratan.com. Yes. And you're on Instagram.
I am indeed. Yeah. So people can jump on my website, atiratan.com. My Instagram is at atiratan, and I also have Facebook as well, which is at Atira Tan Yoga.
Beautiful. Yeah. And your book, for people who are interested in purchasing your book, where is the best place to go to find that?
Well, I think that Amazon is the best place to find my book. If you like to download my free chapter of my book, you can also jump on my website and you can download a chapter of my book chapter. But I would really recommend for people to get out there and also read the other stories by these amazing women that's part of the book. So if you like to purchase that, you can jump on Amazon.
Wonderful. And last piece, I saw on your website you offer a toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you share what that is about? Yeah.
Yeah. So this toolkit are workshops, video workshops, and also a PDF and different resources that can really help facilitators to be more trauma informed. So there's certain things, that are important in the trauma informed facilitation paradigm. And the toolkit can actually be applied to anybody. So if you're a facilitator, it doesn't matter if you're working in plant medicine or psychedelics or not, if you're a group facilitator or even a therapist or, maybe somebody that's just starting in their practice, this toolkit can be really, really helpful. And talking about expressive arts, one of the video lectures that I share in a workshop is around how to harness creativity for healing trauma. So that's also part of the toolkit as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you greatly. So thank you so much for being with us. Please go follow Atira. She's one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram. I just appreciate your powerful voice and your courage and your vision always. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Casey. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Are you ready to take the next step? Please visit us at microdosingforhealing.com to access our free Microdosing 101 workshop. In it, you'll learn more about our diverse community, our supportive group programs, and discover if earth medicine practice might be right for you. See you in the next episode.